Here's part two of my book, Portraits of Rodeo Clowns and Royalty. The epigraph is by Louis Adamich. Living is like licking honey off a thorn. The golden rose of Dartmoor. As a crow calls from her neighbor's larch, Sarah must tell an 11-year-old boy, your mother is dying of cancer. Later, she must run to another client's funeral. Endless rain has exhausted a wilting rose. Nimbus clouds migrate above Dartmoor, and their undersides hold more tears than Sarah could cry, but not many more. Far away, the horizon is a naked hill. It, too, is the color of the rain. But suddenly, the bright sun breaks onto the browning lips of a golden rose. A spotted butterfly drinks from the heart of the shriveling flower. Its rose hip is about to be undressed, bare, glorious, and whole. To maim the rose. No one gave her permission to maim the rose. She didn't ask. Her predatory hand avoided the thorns and turned aside the stem so that the nipper could cut the right angle. In the darkly curled petals, a tiny red woman waved her hands, hoping to catch the eye of the other. Failing, the small one died with a long-lasting but stately broken wind. The giantess killed another 11, each one unable to explain or reveal she would willingly die for love. Roadside commerce. Who sits beside a box of bundled roses, with her white sign of black letters, advertising more dilemma than fair? She's a shaggy woman, with legs aspraddled, and eyes like tarnishing brass. Roadway dust and a fisty sky mold the slope to her edgy shoulders. When she tucks her feet beneath her bottom, she becomes like a beggar in Delhi. Her goddess is gone. Her betrayal is complete. Her roses wilt in their package. Three voices in the Olmec silence. The gringo. My people are begging for letters from this jungle, and they reread the 20-year-old postcards I once mailed from Papantla. All they know is a little about coffee, that there's human hair on the crucifix Jesus, and that the vipers are striped like black and red stockings. The mestizo. What dreams are in the hands of death? My lungs hold a machete and 2 bullets. My father's eye asks an old revenge. His voice is a blade across the bloodstone, and his spittle slops a green-skinned orange. His mustache writhes in hatred toward Indians, and time slips away, wrapping around the yellow moon. The Totonac. After the tiny whimpers cease, nothing more can add to my sorrow. Not the bean face through the white coffin window, not the breeze through the empty hammock, not my blood that's stopped running by the moon. My lips are cut red by my grinding teeth, and now the petals of my tears will never dry. Don't be a princess sobbing on the floor. Just because God and your parents didn't make it easy to get blackberries to top your ice cream, don't be a princess sobbing on the floor. Every briar patch has its hidden highway. Take off your crown. Shrink your expectations. The drummer's creating a pontoon so you can ride across the lagoon to the pine grove and quiet fern beds. She wears a mask. Oh, how a shy girl will change once she wears a mask to a ball. Her gestures become quivering flames. Her steps grow slower and coy. When she weds, she will remove her veil and lift her dress to dance. Once she discards her bouquet, she departs with the man who must work harder to see her. The prettiest girls. The prettiest girls in high school wore blonde-tinted, flipped hairdos. I couldn't read their faces. I was smitten and intimidated by their honeybee ferocity, their wood wasp grace, and eyes as mysterious as deep water anemones or men of war. The bag lady at the mission. The bag lady at the mission throws on her ragged fur coat, the one with silver spoons sewn to the outside pocket. She dons old silk scarves and drapes them like veils. Catlin's Blackfoot did the same in his bear skin with weasel, snake, frog, and bat carcasses dangling to the ground as he danced to heal someone else. The 21st century's Grizzly man, after watching Werner Herzog's movie. Treadwell, the Grizzly man, died of hubris. He had become the Gaddafi of bears. Did he choose to be eaten by one? For 13 years, he thought that he protected bears because they were healthy and strong. When an old bear fought its hunger, it found itself stronger than the man who thought himself divine. Delusion begets delusion. Just ask your mother. What did she imagine for you when she was young, you were small, and she didn't suffer dementia? Ungloved on the Day of the Dead. Every Saturday afternoon, a fat man in black leather pants walks two shaggy white dogs down our residential street. One Saturday, I counted 60 dogs leashed to their owners who used plastic bags to pick up turds if dropped hot on the lawn of our rental. In this university neighborhood, even the autumn trees have become grasping talons, darkly gnarled and ungloved on the Day of the Dead. Across an empty road. Across the empty road, in an all-night Embers Cafe, an old man at the counter attempts to make conversation with a younger man in a booth. As if in a dream, he calls out through a blue storm of cigarette smoke. "We're not a patient people, are we?" And this sends the younger man to the backroom toilet, where the antiseptic odors and cold ceramic tiles soothe his jittery nerves. Believing he's ignored, the old man leaves on two canes, shuffling the way a moose does when he's collared and drugged from research. Civilization ends. Civilization ends at this corridor. When the old man walks the halls, his slippers shuffle on the linoleum. He stares at the unfamiliar nurse's aide, and his loneliness, like a large lemon, heats up in fear, and a rue thickens inside him. No one listens to him. "A man can't decompose in concrete," he says. "This is barbarous." A passing nurse replies, "Barbara's not working today." If Wu Daozu disappeared. If, as an old man, Wu Daozu clapped his hands and disappeared into the mountain cave he had painted in a mural, who's to say the earth is an unfriendly place? Two mushrooms. Because of the simplest mishap, two children bumped. The sad, stooped woman clings to her sperm bank daughter, whose tears continue their isolation. The family shroud of loneliness passes to this toddler's shoulders. These two stand like mushrooms between garages, where wet leaves mound over the dank garbage, where rust and wetness prevail in their gills. Such sadness, such pain, such fear and distrust, feeding the fungal roots in the soil. She couldn't leave her mother. She couldn't leave her mother and go off to school in the West. They had always suffered together and comforted one another. A dark sack of amniotic ink never disengaged between them. It never shriveled the way an umbilical knot would. It grew so large that she could never avoid its shadow. Three women. Once upon a time, an old woman dreamt of her childhood hens. She called her daughter, who lived in the woods, and that daughter phoned her daughter, who lived at the coast. The three of them deciphered the dream, one conversation at a time. Invisible cords connect them to one another and to the dream, to the hens, to eggs, and to Eve. Two-headed turtle in middle Minnesota. A golfer found a two-headed turtle on the green on a course in middle Minnesota. He knew its rarity, so he carried it home, a trophy to his wife and two children. Such an animal sees in the wider arc, all the directions but one. It can't withdraw its painted heads and go inside. It won't survive the winter. A ramage for the miser. Flip the skinflint's whip over his head. In his prickish fantasy, itsy-bitsy whispers, and his whimpering of sins means little, if nothing, to his greed. Mint puckers his thin lips, the way the hints of bitter losses hurry him toward resistance and then pinches his purse and insists upon his pissiness. The sports writer's pompadour. The sports writer noted that not a single bald man attended his AA meetings. He said that he had found the need to shed his old habits and their appearances, and maybe because his gray pompadour had already hardened beneath hair gel and cynicism, his nasally voice did not seem to come from the regions of his heart. How many knives? No one is sure how many knives the cripple hides in his clothes. Be careful. In his sheath, his most dangerous weapon is accurate love. Three sisters before a mirror. Once upon a time, before a mirror, three sisters were lining their eyes, reddening their lips, and laughing at one another's designs. It was Mardi Gras, and the sisters knew that the parades would beckon men of wealth and fame. Their magic headdresses, alive on the bench, sang Cajun words of enchantment. The tunes were lilts like lapping water, meant to trap a man's desire. The sisters primped, they preened, then gathered their cotton-mouthed charms. Then, with the ease of trees in flower, they donned their hats, and the girlish voices changed to husky determination. Gasoline tanks. What kind of woman welds together empty gasoline tanks, red speedboat tanks, and 5-gallon jerry cans to create a metal sofa on which she can sit cross-legged for meditation? Mona Rose and her father. Mona had hips like honeydew melons and a waist as small as her father's wrist. Under the Orpheum marquee, in leather and silver, she whispered sweet stink to old guys. With her heart in her feet, and her feet in her shadow, she walked the coarsely brightened concrete. Until her father found her in his unpainted garage, hanged with his tow rope coiling her neck. He would always blame her mother. Sweets and candy ladies. Did you have a gumball lady in your neighborhood? Or a lemon drop grandma? Or an auntie who slipped a lifesaver to any boy who neared her pockets? Those sweets and candy ladies are now just pale moons orbiting the planet's co-ops and fair trade supermarkets. At the edge. In blue TV light, at the edge of our living room, a gray mother mouse dangles a sack and slowly drags a pink, blind newborn, just dropped through her frightening uterine passage into a human world with its fur floorboards, PVC drain pipes, rodent poisons, and so many more nooks for hiding and nesting and birthing. My children play with moose skulls. My children play with moose skulls, then wrestle with them beside the mushrooms in the pine grove. When they get bored, they will throw them among the dry ferns. Our Labrador lopes after a garrulous shadow. At his nesting place, a few blue feathers from a teal's wing spray like petals of silk. The moose knees and the leg bones like birch trees are all part of an extraordinary butchering. The marrow-filled stems will be ground for feed, and the children will fill the pig's trough after dinner. The sweet October sun scratches my tabletop. My skinning knives and my fillet knives gleam beside the meat, which is wrapped in white paper and ready to be stacked in the freezer for the upcoming winter, spring, and summer. At the communion rail. At the communion rail in the green cathedral, a mitreless bishop stands with the man who hears his dead granny singing in the choir loft. Sunlight shoots through the stained glass window and reflects off the armament of organ pipes. Light sheathes the stations of the cross and 4 statues, a bull, an eagle, a lion, and a man. This man does not want confession or the counsel of this bishop, nor from others entombed in the drawers beneath the altar. As the cleric watches with wide eyes, a brown snake climbs the spine of the man and sleepily rests its viperish snout on his naturally balding crown. 2 days of rain. In these woods, 2 days of rain bring a delicate embrace of new leaves. Cigar smoke coils around a child who thrives on his grandpa's presence. A cougar leaps up through the boy's throat, past his tongue and the fence of his teeth, over his soft lip and into the room. The strong beast then stalks the house, carefully sniffing furniture legs and the piano stool. It calmly avoids the kitchen, climbs the stairwell in 2 strides, and looks toward the bedrooms and pillows. All the while, the old man watches the cat mind searching the house. His cigar end glows red and flowery. With a single leap, the cat returns to the boy, who swallows the cat again. Then the child fades into the rain. The bushes bend slightly as the old man disappears among the tree limbs. I've told this story many times, yet I never tell it when the sun shines. Some stories should never see the light. The lantern carrier. A lantern carrier walked up to me and hid his face behind the light, with his arm outstretched and a quick knee cocked, and a package of spirit up his sleeve. He asked me to answer his simple questions, then promised me nothing of value. Whose rear end ways cut through crap and turn your words to gas? Who's faster than light but slower than silk, spinning out caterpillar's ass? Who winks with one eye and farts with the other, yet convinces you he cares? Who's always living in the cartoon mirror, yet knows all life's affairs? The turtle shell shaman. A turtle shell lies in the swamp grass, hollowed by carnivorous bugs. The jawbone sleeps deep inside, where the turtle retracted its head to die. As I run my finger on the armor plates, a cellophane covering crumbles. I shake the shell. It rattles its jaw, and I feel the turtle shell shaman cross in front of the sun, on a cloud, riding with his hands free, extended high in turtle fashion. There are stripes on his face, orange and black. His arms are sinewy paint and animal lightning. He is silent. His shadow passes. Only the gnawing breezes and the intimate buzzing of insects echo in the shell. A Sepia Portrait. A child in the doorway has a drop of sweat on his eyelid. His palm stains the door jamb, and his lip turns with a query. His half-shadowed parent poses with her one-tooth sneer. She suckles another child with milk and sweat, stirs the dust with her toe, and sits a stone. The birthday cake. Once upon a time, I watched a beautiful woman deliver a decorated cake to her lover's doorstep. She set the cake down gently, just far enough away so the door wouldn't hit when it opened. Then from her purse, she pulled out a knife. She rang the bell, stabbed the cake, and ran. Thief, thief. Thief, 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 thief. The blue jay warns of a nearby intruder. Old Audrey from across the gully is walking through the woods with a broom. When she opens her mouth, her teeth look like bone fragments and grub worms. When she smiles, not her eyes, her mind, or heart ever changes. Every morning, she fills 14 feeders for the birds. She told me she hates all predators, so she has declawed her cats. Models. Models must be sexy, with tight-lipped ferocity or toothy-wide smiles. Women models smile and expose their top and lower racks of teeth, like fierce chimpanzees extending their jaws in threatening postures. But when they pose, something else makes them smile, with their long bodies strung toward a confident contortion. It's on those bottom teeth. Bared to the world, the teeth are a sensitive fence. When models suck air over enamel, their gums tingle in the biological breezes, and shivers scoot down their backbones. And when they smile like that in pleasure, all we know are the teeth, and we try to peek past that fence. Their eyes are glazed, and we want that shine. We want that shiver, that threatening monkey posture. Beware. On time-lapsed photos, we see the dancer tell tales with her costumed body. She's a Nubian goddess, or a Balinese puppet bedecked in furs and rainbows. She's the elegant sachet of milkweed seeds floating above the grasses. She moves on the breeze as if it's love, and she knows how to break her promise. Beware, Samson, Suleiman, and Shakespeare. Beware, my flamenco nephews. The King of Peacocks. Once upon a time, the King of Peacocks sat atop a mountain range and cried out for his queen. She had died egg-bound in the woods, and scavengers already sniffed her carcass. The king cried until every eye was heavy and stinging with tears. His grief grew to such enormous size that he had to hide it behind a feathery train of feigned vanity. The Wheelbarrow. The demented woman in a turtleneck shirt pushes a rusty wheelbarrow toward the lake. Its single metal wheel squeals annoyingly while she grips the handles and follows a sandy path. At the lakeside, she shovels fine sand to the barrow, which she built herself with angle iron and mesh, ratcheted bolts, twists of fence wire and paper clips, crossed copper electrodes and stainless steel cutlery. As she returns with her load meant for her garden, the grains simply dribble away. At her gate, hung on cabinet hinges and latched with sisal twine, she realizes it's time to refill the barrow. She hurries back to the shore, while the windmill with its broken shaft spins in every little breeze. A stone between her breasts. I know a woman who keeps a small stone between her breasts, like one lover for two boats of love. When she sits by a lake, her mind darts like a swallow that's leashed to her heart through the stone. She whispers to the unseen, and to the goldfinch from her dreams, and to the mystery of her feminine fire. That stone is the doorknob to her cottage of secrets, and the hearth where her lovers turn to ash. 3 mutes in a small town auditorium. In the velvet-walled auditorium, a man with a stumpy arm tells a story by whistling and waving his stub. 2 other mutes with an obscure dignity wiggle their fingers in a Pentecostal shout. They are his tiny audience, half seated like blackbirds, pretending to flee at his shoot. They are excitable cottonwoods in a South Dakota ditch. Their teeth are rotten from well water. Their faces crease as if gully washed, and teensy flags flutter from their shirt cuffs. On a table backstage, empty cafeteria pans bear spoon tracks through cross-hashed mashed potatoes, which these 3 serve the actors who are now back at the motel bar. He had the eyes of a Magyar. He had the eyes of Magyar, just returned from Ukraine. Or maybe they were the eyes of a horse leaping from a William Blake plate. He quickly strode through town, past the library, the feed store, the bait shop, the motel, and the tavern. He just kept on walking and disappeared going north. Suspicion and speculation spread from his path. Also dust, and here and there a swift but lazy grasshopper. In his wake, I saw it fall to the roadside, a personal weapon he was trying to dispose. It was leathery to the touch and had the scent of wet rags. Its thin ribbons flapped like shoestrings, red, gold, green, white, and violet. I opened it and recognized it. A breviary with the vespers, matins, and lauds. I could only imagine where he'd been, and the 1,001 sinners pushing him on. The diabetic hunchback. Sitting bent, I reach out with tidy fingers to steal a piece of candy. It's my jar and my candy. It's okay for the woman across the hall to nibble her mints, not me. I keep still. my heart seeks sugar. A tiny flame is in my veins, but the distance through which I reach cools my flesh, and the flame is not sufficient. The frosty, mobile neighbor cannot give me the sugar I crave. I wonder, how can I get it? The feedlot owner. Where calves suckle, he cocks his knee and mounts the fence rail. From Bull Durham, cigarette smoke lifts like a tulip. There's water, 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 and more congestion in his fields. A nodule of mud from the toe of his boot dissolves in the water. He watches. Rot, rot, and more shit in the feedlot. He wheezes. Black, black nodes and tiny, tiny bubbles. He wheezes. Black, black odes and tiny, whiny bubbles. A calf's lip squeezes the pink, pink tits for milk without bubbles. Hardy Gullickson. Hardy Gullickson sits in his American Motors Matador, his slack old arm out the window in the breeze. Through the windshield, he sees springtime greens and young blue skies, and he thinks his dead dog is beside him. Somewhere below on the street, ants carry information to their anthills. They shuttle back and forth on foraging patrols. Somewhere above, in a jumbo jet, travelers sip coffee or cocktails, leaping time zones in hours. He's never moved that fast. The Matador's engine is barely in idle, but his grip is sweaty on the wheel. His heart has filled with new, salty sadness. It rolls in his arms and into his throat. Oh yes, he cried when his wife died, drunk, blank in the snowbank beside their fence. He had fallen drunk in a stupor on the TV room floor, but this, too, is as bad. He no longer drives, but sits in the car at the curbside, idling the engine of the rusting machine. Then he simply goes back into the garage. He can think of nowhere to go. Do you know the man who wears 4 coats? Do you know the man who wears 4 coats? Every day, whether winter or not, he leans on the painted brick wall of the Colonial Cafe. He never gets cold with his long storm coat and 3 jackets beneath, and he never speaks. He sniffs the traffic like a frightened squirrel. His uncommonly small head ripples from the top of his cloaked obelisk body. His hands are tucked into his belt. His arms flap like featherless wings to carry him across Dale Street. In August, he replaces the storm coat with a Seaway denim jacket. Yes, it's over the other 3 jackets. He still wears his trousers under strapped overalls and rubber buckle overshoes over work boots. Each Sunday, he goes to Como Park for free music and an ice cream cone. His youth must be somewhere beneath his wrappings. And as he walks home in the evening, the long monumental shadow he casts reassures him of his power and his timeless existence. And finally, at 10 p.m., when he is in the dark, walking up the stairway to his room, he knows assuredly that the shadows he casts are so large and extended, the earth sleeps each night inside his power. May is a month of terror. Beautiful May has its secret terrors. For the white-headed dandelion, for the apple blossom that wilts and falls, for the hasty robin who pushes her egg out the nest by mistake. Just before sunrise, an old man paces and steps on the sidewalk cracks. His wife, who resents her tissue-thin skin and her childless life, pulled away again. And now the darkness between them sets off a new, terrifying tremor. Under urban life. My old uncle chews cookies, awaits diabetes, and gathers hesitancy into his clothes bags and closets. Better he lived in prairie dog suburbs and watched out for rattlesnakes who kill for their food. The banks of her bones. An old woman with more weight in her head than her body can bear bends to watch the path before her. The memories inside of her are rivers of time, eroding the banks of her bones. As her bodily fluids diminish and her flexibility wanes, her soul has a flight path for visions. Held by her flesh and the anchor of her family, her soul flies through the trees. She talks to monarchs and birds and streaks of lightning. She skates on ice as it melts to water. She goes in and out of holes in the ground with the shrews, the milk snake, and spiders. As life consumes her body and memory eats her marrow, the mystery of her age reassures us. Her affection and patience are expertly active in a way I'm just starting to know.